Hello and welcome back. This is actually later in the day from the last video. I've unexpectedly got maybe an hour or so to make some progress. And I think in the last video we hit a bit of a snag. I'm a bit excited to get back to it because I think we might have a solution. So let's head to the README because I made some notes. What were we doing? We've added a second quad, we've added Z dimensions so we can overlap them and know which way around we expect them to appear. We have enabled this, so this Z comparisons bit is in progress, but it's not worked. Right, if I come back, we run, like, this isn't right. So if I remember right, I think we're drawing this quad first, this quad second. This bottom right one should be in front of the other one. Now that weirdness was attempted sort of hack fix in my fragment shader, which I think I'm going to just delete at this point. Or in fact, let's comment it out because I think I'm going to want to refer back to some of the stuff in it. Can we use the run script, which will rebuild the shaders? This was the actual behavior we saw on the first attempt. And so what's happening is we first draw this quad. It correctly draws the same pink color from the background into these parts because they're transparent. But because they were written to, they're updating the Z value in the depth buffer, which means that when we then draw the second quad, which is being drawn after it, but is appearing behind it, the fragments that should be writing yellow into here are failing the depth buffer check. They think they're behind something that's already been drawn, so they don't draw. Which is tricky. So doing a bit of Googling around this, and it looks like actually what people say is if you want proper transparent behavior, you actually do want to do ordered draw calls. You know, this kind of the pattern that I was trying to migrate away from. Maybe this is naive because I guess I'm not a game developer. I've not done a lot of this before, and I'm assuming that as your logic gets bigger, it would be easier to not have to worry about the order that you put your draw data into your vertex and index buffers, and instead be able to just give things a Z index and send that off with them. So that's what sent us off on this path. Out of curiosity, right? I'd seen a lot of stuff about depth buffer checking and never done it. It may be that actually that was just wrong and we want to revert all of this and take this a bit of a fun learning tangent. I'm not quite going to give up on it yet, though. So I think the problem that's hard to solve as a general problem is general transparency, right? Where we, we could set our alpha value to 0.5, which means that we need to know what's directly behind me right now before I can know what my color is going to be. I'm really doing, I guess, like windowed template type transparency. So I'm not having like a stained glass window effect. I just want a window. Right? I want my sprite to be able to say this chunk, that's above my shoulder and outside of my head is see-through and is not me. And I think we can do that if I go back to my README. Looking online, I found this thing in the GLSL docs. I thought I could jump to that by just clicking it. Is that right? Let's see. Me still struggling with Emacs. So let's jump to this. And I made a note, it was on page 115. The fragment shader has a discard keyword that we can use. We do a bit of a read. These are the different jumps that are allowed in GLSL. This may be a hint that it might be time for me to start actually learning GLSL, like properly learning it. So far, I've just kind of picked up sort of by osmosis little bits and pieces I've needed them. I've never made like a concerted effort to really learn. But so this is the like full documentation that probably goes into all the detail, like more detail than you'd need to know. But the important part for us is down here, the fragment shaders have a discard keyword, which, where am I looking, causes the fragment to be discarded, and no updates to any buffers will occur. And I think that's relevant to us because when they say no updates to any buffers, that'll include our depth buffer. So I'm reasonably sure that we can come in here. I guess we do want to sample, right? So we need to go and grab our, what's it called? We do need to go and grab our, sort of sample from the texture, so we know what we're looking at. And I think what we're going to say is things are either completely opaque, so alpha channel 1, or they're completely transparent. If you're at all transparent, you're completely transparent. And the way we can do that is instead of reading the value and writing the value, we read the value. And then I think we can just have a conditional here. If outColor alpha is less than 1, then discard. And I think that should work, right? Because this, where before what we were doing is we were writing the same value that appeared in the background, but we were affirmatively writing the value, which would cause an update in the depth buffer. Now we're just saying do nothing, which will do the same thing in the color attachment, but should not update the depth buffer. So let's give that a run. And it looks like it's worked. Ooh, that's unpleasant. Our depth buffer isn't resizing when we change size of the screen. Okay. Well, there's one thing we need to go and work on. But we don't resize the screen, that works fine. That's quite fun. Let's go grab our readme quickly as well. So I made some more notes just as they occurred to me when I was first reading this stuff. Yeah, this is what I was just saying. So let's just start deleting these off. So that's one thing we've already said. One thing I wasn't sure of is if an early return would do the same thing. I'm guessing not. I'm guessing if instead we just blank return here, that what we have is we've already set the out color. And there's a GL. In fact, we just deleted it moments ago. One of these. Am I being crazy? Yeah, this GL frag depth gets set by default to the Z component on the fragment that was passed in. I guess we're not using it in here. So yeah, I think this will behave in the original bad way we were saying. Yeah. Whereas this one works. If I can type. Excellent. Let me go grab the readme again. So we now know return doesn't work the same way. Need to experiment with more complex draws involving lots of overlapped quads to be sure that this actually works. Then to decide if this is actually an improvement or if we should just do ordered draws. If we do this workaround to make transparency on or off, probably makes sense to assert that our alpha channels are 0 or 1 and not intermediate values when we load the data from file. Yeah, that's probably a fair point. I'm not sure if I agree past me that we need to do lots more experimenting, because I think it'll be obvious pretty quickly if stuff's not working. I guess we could add one more quad. Right, something that's sort of sandwiched between the two. we'll do a bit more of that. And I think this is probably also sane, right? So we're going to make it so we're essentially treating alpha value like a binary flag, right? Like a Boolean flag, like it's there or it's not. Which is potentially slightly wasteful, I guess. There's probably other ways to do this, but this is going to work for us. So I'm going to do this for now. Sorry, I'm yawning. Oh. But that does mean if I were to try and pass in a texture that had like intermediate values, then things would break, or at least would behave unexpectedly. So I'm going to put an assert in for that. I might do that first, because that's pretty quick and easy to do. I guess it's going to be somewhere near texture image being made. We're in here. Copies the data over. There we go. So, okay, XY, channels in file. Reads in data. Data size bytes is equal to... Data size bytes is equal to the size of times the length. Yep. What are we going to do in here? For RGBA. Probably can't do that, can I? Alright, so 4 byte and index in data. If index mod 4 is not equal to 0, then we'll continue. Else, if b is not equal to 0 and b is not equal to, I think it would be 255, then panic. We format e print line I don't want to say error. Let me say assert. Right, it's not like it's broken. It's just unexpected behavior that I'm not promising future me that we support. So we'll assert only total opaque or total transparent values are currently supported. Received alpha, and we can put our byte value in there, and then we'll have a panic with an unexpected alpha value. All right. Out of interest, does panic? That is interesting. What do I get if it doesn't panic? Okay, it takes ages because it's printing loads of stuff. This seems wrong, doesn't it? Get back to it. Go, let's kill that. Four is not equal to 0. Index. Ah, that's a point. The index at 0 will hit that. Does that hit it? Unexpected alpha value. Do they all hit it? How many of these do we hit? Format, print line, index, index. It'll actually be 3 that I'm interested in. Yeah, it gets through quite a few. Let's put a to do re-enable when we got we got what? Our actual textures we're interested in. Guessing the smiley just has some weird bits in it. Which might actually confirm, I think we suspected this from some of the weird results we saw with our kind of hacky solution to the problem. Might imply that the hacky solution actually would have worked. But yeah, I don't know. We do that one. Yeah, there's loads of them. My only guess is it must be something. I don't know. I'm chatting. I haven't got a guess. So pop that in there. If it doesn't do the printing, what happens? It basically instant. Yeah, near enough. So we do that. I think. Do we want to wrap that into an only in debug mode? Maybe later. I think it's fast enough. We might just do it all the time. And if it isn't, we can add that when we need to. So that was this in the README. Let's go and stage a bunch of that then, because it is currently running. So this includes our shader update. I'm going to say fix. What do I say? It fix depth ordered draws by discarding. I'll quit window transparency in depth order draws by discarding non-opaque fragments. Go with that. Push that upstream. Wasn't very fast, was it? Alright, I think this is a valid point. Let's go and have a look in our renderer. Where is it we define all of our data? It's actually in main.odin. We're in here. So we've defined quad 2 as being in front of quad 1. And our draw order now shouldn't matter. That was the entire goal of this. So let's just check that is true. Yeah, so that looks the same, right? That's the goal. This to me feels like it's the like, I don't know what the word would be, like the architectural win that we're aiming at is I would like to be able to just push the data in and not care. As long as my vertices and indices line up with each other, it should be fine. So I guess we're now operating on the level where we've got quads. Let me go and add another quad. And I'm going to do, I guess up here we'll do Z1, 0, Z2 is 0.1, Z3 will be 0.2. I can't just do this one easily with multi-cursor, so we won't bother. This one I think I can do easily with multi-cursor. And then we're going to want to do, what do we want to do? Let's go grab from there to there, down to there, grab all of that, stick it all in there, except instead of Z2, these four we're going to have Z3. Right. Also think hard to do on the zeros. Okay, let's do in this one. They're going to go from minus 0.25 to 0.75. So all of these go like that, you go like that, you go like that, and you go like that. You go like that. That should have added a second third smiley. It didn't, because I forgot. I also need to add a set of indices for it. So same rule, we go increment, and increment, and increment. Repeat that one. Repeat the second one, add the last one. Cool. Does that make sense? Yep, so Z3 is in front of everything, and it sits in front of everything. Z3 sits between the two. And if Z3 sits behind everything, that isn't what I expected. Okay, interesting. So I guess the background must be drawn on 0. That's fun to know. But that is to say, that looks to me like it's doing what we want it to do, right? So I don't know if that's worth fiddling with more. I think I'm pretty convinced that's worked. Can I also just make these numbers big? No. Are they all scaled to like... Can't scale anywhere. I guess maybe things are getting clamped. Oh, I turned all that off though. Maybe I've missed something. Okay. Well, that's worth knowing. If they're between 0 and 1, it works. And it works fine. In that case, what Z1, let me just check it now. Z1 is at the top, Z3 is in the middle, Z2 is at the bottom, yeah. Yeah, I think that works for me, I reckon. And we can call that done. Nice. Let's bang a quick commit in. Oops. I'm hitting all the wrong buttons. Stage, commit. What have I done? Update, readme. Happy we're done with depth buffers. So we update the readme. Push. Grand. Sip a drink. Cool. Right, this is where things get difficult again. So I haven't got a firm plan in mind for what we're going to do next. I have a rough idea. I think I wrote this into the README. We can now write things, but we have nothing we want to actually write to the screen. We have a random smiley face that I found. So I think the next thing to do will be, let's put together a set of assets we care about. So probably a font. Imagining like we're going to want to be able to make a button. So we can make like a start game button and then start working out how we click things or how we navigate between things with our keyboard. Then we can start working out our Tetris logic and our game state and all that sort of stuff. I haven't done any of that yet, though. I don't think I'm going to do that now. I don't feel I've got the time to do that before I need to get to bed. So the other thing to say is, I think I've decided this would be a good point for a little refactoring check. Let's check for some obvious bits to see if there's anything that wants tidying. I do think there's quite a lot of places where we still have in-out variables. So, I spot any examples there, right? We have to in-out device. I don't know if I'm quite landed on it makes sense to turn all of those into wrapped function calls. Maybe it is, though. I might go through and just make them all into... So, what am I thinking about? I have this wrapper class. Actually, thinking about it, these aren't wrappers, are they? Okay. Let me sidetrack myself immediately. I'm going to move those into mine.odin. Like so. And that means you're going to import core. Oops, sorry. Core format. Grand. Excuse me. That totally does exist. There we go. So, my thinking with these are Odin has some abilities in it that C doesn't have that makes some of these calls easier to do. And my particular use case means that I don't need to be quite as generic as some of these calls are. So I start with these enumerate calls because they're particularly painful because you have to make a call with an in-out count and then another call with an in-out pointer to your data that you've allocated. I know, because I'm the one using this, that I'm just always going to end up allocating as much data as I need to fill that out because there's no other reason for me to be calling this. So I can wrap that up in a way that, you know, that it makes sense that the Vulkan the Vulkan library doesn't want to like quietly allocate that memory for. It wants you to own that. So that's an easy one. And then other ones like this, really, I've wrapped the function call, in this case, which can't fail, just to avoid the awkward in-out, right? So it's nice to have this memprop thing be declared inside of this function. So it's just scoped to this function, it gets returned out, and you have to give it a name at the point that you're getting it that you care about. Yeah, instead of having to declare it and then call this thing and pass it in. I don't know. It just feels slightly neater, right? If we go to the place that calls this. You can just do memory properties of the thing. I don't know. That feels more normal to me. Is basically where I've landed. Is it actually better? Is it actually worth doing any more of that kind of refactoring? So if we look in here, the enumerator is an obvious win. All can get physical device properties. This could be another example, right? Okay, I'll tell you what we'll do. I'll shrink that page down a little bit and hope it's not too unreadable. And let's... Oh my god, what have I done? You go back to how you were. Can we zoom you out a little bit? Look at the recording, that does look a bit small. Can we zoom you in? A little bit, does that look okay? Yeah, I think so. I think I'm going to just do a quick scan down for maybe like the next half hour. And if we catch things like this, we'll pull them into reusable functions. I'm also going to make a point, though, to do a first search for get physical device. So we haven't got that one. So, I don't know if there's any sane groupings with this. So, no. Get physical device properties. I've got a clean commit state at the minute as well, don't I? Yeah, so I've moved them. That makes sense. You've reformatted. Come to you, probably reformatted. Flags one time submit. Yeah. That's one thing. We should probably do a format call again because I haven't really been doing them, have I? Okay, so get physical device properties, which will take in a device. Physical device or just device? Physical device. A physical device. It will return a where am I looking? Properties. V physical device properties. And we're going to do a Falcon get physical device properties for physical device. SAM properties. And it returns. Come in here and we say that user are actually now equal to bk get physical device properties for device. Properties device type is that or that we do thing. Else if renderer. Yeah, so we set it, and if we don't find it, we give up. Let's recompile. Still works. Happy days. Properties, yada 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 yada. We're looking, pick a device Q index. We've already done that one. Q flags, pretend supported is a GLFW thing. If not found, yada yada yada, creates a queue. U there. Dynamic rendering equals local read. Bunch of stuff, dynamic rendering features. Bunch of stuff, create info. Okay, so this is the kind that I think is maybe more interesting. Is do we want to do these with OK bools? So the disadvantage to just having an OK ball is we lose the handle on the result. To be honest, I think maybe I'm being a bit too worried about that. I'm going to do it just for making things easy to read, and if it goes badly, then we'll give up. So what are we doing? We're going to go... is it even worth doing? Because create device literally get called in one place. Okay. You know what? Actually, if in doubt, I can just leave that alone. So let's leave that be. Let's take your brackets away, because that doesn't seem to make any sense. And then you, sir. What's that 0 do? Q index. A pointer to Q. You make one for get device Q. So get device Q. Be a procedure that takes in a device, v device, a Q family index, which I think is a U32, which we'll just write in full. Q index, so U32, and it will return us the Q. Again, I'm going to go ahead and do like this. So I can say Q, the Vulkan Q, and then we can do the empty return thing. So we're going to go v dot get device Q for device and Q family index and Q index and Q, and then return. Then in here, instead of doing that, we're going to do vk get device Q for renderer dot device and renderer Q family index 0. I'm going to say in here renderer dot Q is equal to that. And works. That's a good point. That's something more constructive I could be doing. Cool. I do think these are worth doing, right? I think this is probably a good example. As I'm reading down this, I think my dumb brain is very quick to recognize, like, I am assigning this value. Whereas I think if I'm skimming, I'm likely to miss it here. So that still feels a reasonable thing to be doing. But this is super broken. So we should add that. Let's commit that, and we'll say a bit of refactoring. Right. Where do we handle things resizing? I can't remember. We'll search for resize. Resizable is true. GC window resized is true. The renderer says if resized. So what does this live on? My global context has a boolean for window resized. Inside the window resize callback, it gets set to true. Side of my draw frame, we handle screen resized and bail out of this frame if the screen has changed size. Okay. That, I mean, I wrote it, so it's unsurprising. That still feels sane to me. What do we do when we handle screen resized? We wait for device idle. Why am I doing that? I can't remember. That may have been just boot belts and braces type, like, carefulness. We destroy the swap chain image view and the swap chain images Okay, so we deallocate the memory that we had allocated. We destroy the image view and the swap chain and the pipeline. We recreate them all. We set GC thingy resized is false. Okay, so I'm assuming either side of this. Can I do old extent is renderer.surface extent? Just new extent renderer surface extent. Format print. Old is, oh my god, old extent. And new is new extent. We do that, bangs it up. So change the size, change the size, change the size. Did it do it? Not even sure if it did. So let's maybe drag it instead. So 1916, 1031. Oh yeah, there we go. The height's not changing. The width is. And it gets smaller, and then it gets bigger. Cool. At this point, we have our new extent. Something in here is indeed changing it, so we can get rid of all these. And what do we need to do? We need to destroy our depth buffer and recreate it. That sound right? So in here, I need to destroy depth buffer or depth images and recreate them. Can we please grep for everywhere that's doing depth image? We're in here. Actually, this probably needs to all be pulled into another function, right? Does that sound right? Success. That's a point. Now involves having to do all this guff. It does, in the way we've got it written though, still have to happen, doesn't it? Alright. What does that do then? So we come in here, we're going to have to say create depth image and views. I'll pass it in my renderer. And I think if we do, oh, come on. We do that. Grab all of this. And no, we've gone too far. Create depth image view. Take all of that. And we bang it in down here. And we'll wrap it. Some extra parens. And we'll say create depth image and views. Yes, and view, more accurate. Proc. That'll take in renderer. Pointer to a renderer. And we this. Pretty sure that I thought there'd be a type issue somewhere. We go create depth image and view. Okay, yeah, so that should totally not work. Yeah, because that doesn't exist. But when we do this, it does work, but breaks on resize still. But we can now call that again, which is useful. Now in our handle resize function, we are able to create depth, image, and view on our renderer. Here, I think we can go Vulkan, destroy image for renderer device and depth image. We can do Vulkan destroy image view for renderer device renderer dot depth nil. And unlike the swap chain images who have their memory handled by something somewhere, these we manage. I guess it's free. Just free memory? Free memory. On our device for our renderer dot depth memory. Bang. Okay. Fences must be reset before submitting. You submit. That's interesting. You submit fence 63 message 63 fence submitted in signaled state. Ah. Fence is not VK handle. Must be unsignaled. I didn't expect that. How have we done that? Going to be something about our image layout transitions. We're in here. Q submit. Can't convert. Can I just send it a 0 value? Very nice. Does that mean I was doing that somewhere else that I shouldn't have been? Where are my other transitions? Memory barrier to fragment shader output. No, so they should be using that fence because they're using the actual like big boy submit at the end. You present KHR top index. Where's this fence? There. See, I've just done some bad copy pasting. Cool. So that all works, and if I drag and I drag, that all works. I'm going to run it in RenderDoc just to see. Okay, first, let's say in here, handle screen resizing in depth image. Cool. That's useful. Yeah, let me go do. Well, I guess first off, let's do a just check. So let's run from Flectris. Can we do? Michael, can I remember what the thing is? I do that, and I do /format. Back in here. Didn't actually update anything. Cool. So there's no formatting needed. We've committed, we've pushed. We're happy that works. I want to run it in render doc. I'm just curious if it tanks our frame rate. If we jump to mine Flectris, we'll do a Odin build main out bin debug. There, render doc. Big and launch application. Grab our executable. Launch it. Okay, so it's currently running at like 2,000 frames per second ish. And if I start dragging this back and forth, yeah, you can see it very significantly drops the frame rate. But you know, from 2,000 frames per second to 500, so that's not the end of the world. That's interesting. I'll make it really small. The one thing we could do if that was a problem, I guess what we could do is we could detect that the frame rate, that the size of the frame is changing, and basically stop rendering until you stop changing the size, right? Like these sudden changes aren't anywhere near as bad for frame rate because they just kind of bang and happen. It's the kind of continual change, and I assume this is the cost of us doing lots of just lots of memory allocating and freeing. Right, the way I've written this, every time we detect the frame has changed size, we're going to have to free the old resource and reallocate new resources. I do think we're getting into like real don't care edge cases though, because how do we handle that more nicely? Like I said, I think the obvious thing to do is just be like, okay, we just stop really drawing. We could have it just clear, right? Your screen just goes blank until you stop. That seems kind of gross though. I don't know. I don't think it's worth worrying about at this point. That's a real tidy up later if you care. No problem, I think. Oops. Get that back. Okay. Can we go back to the README? Do you know what? I think we're probably fine without doing a load of refactoring. Right, I've found when I need to read through things that it's understandable enough. I don't doubt there's a load of stuff in here that we could pull out, but I do think I'm not sold on whether or not we care about having the result values and be able to print them out, if that's useful for us for debugging, or if that's just making noise, or if we'd be better off with OK ball type patterns. We may end up wanting to implement a logger later that we can like turn on or off, which might affect the way we choose to handle it. So I think it's probably not worth the effort right now, outside of places where it's a very obvious win. So we'll do them as they come up, but I think right. So I stand by that. I think that's just better than what it was before. But I'm not going to be too delicate about it. I think we're just going to keep bashing code out. I do have to say, I think it's been a bit of an experiment for me this time. I think I said this in one of the early videos. I think it was a Carmack quote as he's on his way out of Facebook, and really he's complaining about the inability of the engineers at Facebook to write, good code for sufficiently complicated projects. Admittedly, working on projects much more complicated than anything I've worked on. So I think he was brought in when they were working on their VR headsets and struggling with the performance and getting the latency low enough to make that a good experience. But I think amongst a bunch of complaints, and a lot of the complaints sound a bit kind of old man shouts at kids. But I think one thing that did jump out at me is I think he was complaining about the number of functions people write, right? And the amount of kind of redirect through the code that you had to get through, which I think is probably people trying to be very like, don't repeat yourself about their code. And I think he really was just kind of like, look, I don't care if you're doing something that's got side effects in it. I would rather you just copy pasted it and had all of the stuff in line in place, unless you're doing it, lots and lots of times. Obviously, a lot of my code at the minute is very side effecty because we're kind of running through a bunch of steps and updating a load of state on our renderer. So there's just side effects everywhere. Like that surface extent thing where I had to do a bit of a check to check it was being set like I thought. Those things end up being hard to track. So actually, I guess if you were really following that to the letter of the law, you would have copy-pasted the blocker code for all of that stuff. But it's a lot of code. I think there is a judgment call to make in there. But basically, this project, I mean, you can see it in this example on screen. At work, I would, without thinking about it, immediately pull this into a function. And it would make, I guess, the overall logic easier to see. So, like, I think blocks like this obviously read very nicely, but they hide a lot of the detail about what you're doing in those blocks, which, admittedly, in this case, is a fair chunk. So, I don't know. So far, this has worked quite well for me. Certainly, if you follow one of the Vulkan tutorials that's written in C++, and it's much more kind of object-oriented in Outlook, at every stage, you're kind of setting up all of these side effects are on fields of the class, and then you have methods that can freely access and update them. So, you have to kind of assume everything is doing that everywhere. I don't know. I've found this to be very transparent and easy to keep working on. It might be just because it's still quite simple. It might be because I'm not working to a deadline. It might be because I wrote it, right? I think this is kind of playing on easy mode, but I don't know. We'll keep working like this until it really bites us. And I think the rule I'm going to keep using is if I am doing the same exact thing. And I guess same exact thing meaning like logically the same thing, not just that I'm writing a lot of the same code, but like actually like information-wise it's the same thing. So like in the handling resizing of windows, I'm not doing the same code incidentally. I'm doing the exact same thing in the exact same way for the same reasons. I think in those cases, there's no argument against making a function. Even if it is just the twice. But, I don't know. Kind of throwing tidiness to the wind, I don't think it's bitten me as much as me a year ago would have guessed. So, who knows? We'll keep doing this. Maybe everybody who ever watches this thinks this is all terrible, but proof will be in the pudding. We'll see how far we can get. Actually, I'm curious because this is all quite verbose. How far in are we? 1,200 lines in there. I think main Odin is quite small at the minute. Yeah, vertex Odin is quite small. And then my VK files are also quite small. So yeah, the project's still pretty small. Cool. I am admittedly waffling now, so I think it might be about time for bed. Cool. I'm so pleased with that. I'm so glad we got that actually working. Right, I think next time I will aim to have a set of, I guess, like font sprites and a sprite sheet, and we'll work out how we organize that data and actually render it. So that's something to look forward to. Catch you next time.